Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe, presented by Bet Online. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, having spent time with the Bucks, Suns, and Knicks. And I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. And also joining us per usual is Michael Worldby Freer, who is a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 128, and tonight's episode honors the 0-2 Denver Nuggets, who are currently shooting 28% from the three-point line this season. Do we think they might be missing KCP? Sure seems that way. Before we get any further into tonight's show, just a quick reminder. Basketball fans, it is that time of year again. The NBA is back. From opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. And fellas, we are now officially at time of recording here on Monday night, 7 days into the NBA season. So no better time to kind of take a peek into some of the teams out there and discuss what we've learned, maybe what we haven't learned. And obviously we have connected here before tonight's show and put our heads together and circled 12 teams that we want to discuss here tonight. But before we do that, Bruce, we have the big Bucks Boston Celtics game going on right now. How are you feeling?
The Bucks really have put up a real good fight considering it's the second half of a back-to-back, losing to Brooklyn on Sunday. But you can see in the fourth quarter, it's right now as I'm speaking, Boston has an 8-point lead in the fourth. And, I think it feels like Boston's going to probably be able to just kind of keep grinding against them, wearing them down. But as far as the first week is concerned, Tatum's playing like the MVP, or at least playing like an MVP, 33 a game. Leads the league in most threes made per game. Jaylen Brown has had an interesting start in the first week. Going into Monday night, he was only shooting 37% from the floor overall, but almost 46% on threes, and he's the team's leading rebounder. So he's playing the all-around game. The one thing I would say, I'm not going to go through every, X and Y on their team, they have shown some signs of maybe getting into cruise control or cruise mode, the mindset, a little bit early in some of these games. They could have very easily blown the game against Detroit on Saturday night, but they kind of made some plays down the stretch in Detroit. They're a young team. They don't really know how to win those games. But Boston, I would say right now, they look just fine, even without Porzingis.
Yeah, and Worldby, what are your thoughts on the Boston Celtics, who are currently 3-0 and have those big wins over the Knicks, Wizards, and Pistons?
Well, it's a formula. The formula they used last season, threes at will. It seems to be more so this year on steroids even. Through the first 3 games, 56% of their field goal attempts have been threes. And because they're so good at making them, they get over half their points. 54% of their scoring has come from threes. So they led the league in both categories last season, and they're well on their way to doing it again. They have 6 players entering Monday that had taken at least 10 threes this season, and all 6 are shooting 42% or better. So, how do you beat a team like that? Their defense has been a little suspect to start the season, not up to what we are used to seeing from them. They've given up 119 points per 100 possessions in 2 of the 3 games. The only exception being against the lowly Wizards. They held them under a point per possession, which you expect them to do when you're one of the best defenses in the league. And Bruce mentioned they really almost blew it against the Pistons, who came back real nicely. But then in the close game, when they get tough, their defense got tough. Boston did 2 of 9 for, they held the Pistons in the final 3 minutes in those clutch minutes or whatever. That's huge. And Tatum is often reminding everybody why he's a 3-time first-team All-NBA player. It's 11, taking almost 12 threes a game. I mean, we don't expect that to continue, but that's just an example of how crazy they're shooting the three. It's been impressive so far, and you're expecting that from Boston, but they're really up in the level to start the season, which has been impressive.
Yeah, no question about it. And for me, one of the big standouts has been Peyton Pritchard. Obviously, well timed to say that here on Monday night, as he has 25 points and 9 of 13 shooting, including 7 of 11 from deep. However, before tonight's game, he's coming off games of 15 points and 19 points, of course, coming off that bench. So, Bruce, I got to ask you here before we move on to the Bucks, is Peyton Pritchard for real? And is he potentially a dark horse for Sixth Man of the Year candidate?
Well, it's still very early on in the season, but considering the role that Mazzulla has for him, which is basically when he comes into the game, first of all, he's a dog on defense. He's not a shutdown defender, but he moves his feet, and he's always seems to have a nose for loose balls and whatever. And then he just shoots the three with confidence. I mean, it's like he doesn't even really care where he is on the floor when he lets it go. As soon as he's, over half court, he's looking to shoot. And we've seen him make a lot of those kind of threes at the end of quarters. He made one in the finals last year. I mean, so he's just, I think, look, it's, we purposely didn't predict Sixth Man of the Year when we did our preview show last week, because we said we don't know who's going to be in what role. Peyton Pritchard would not have been in my, on my radar screen to be a Sixth Man of the Year candidate. But, right now he's sitting on 28 points in the fourth quarter against Milwaukee. It's like, leading scorer.
And that could be huge for them, right? You get your starters off their feet, especially Drew Holiday, a guy that played this summer in Paris. I mean, the fact that he can come in, produce points, play solid defense, like you alluded to there, I think could be huge, and a reason we might have to consider him if he can keep this up as the season goes on. Now, World B, let's shift our attention to the team the Celtics are playing here tonight, and that is the Milwaukee Bucks. They are currently 1-2. Certainly appears they're about to become 1-3. And they have their one win against the Sixers on opening night in Philadelphia. And, of course, that was without Paul George or Joel Embiid. So with that, they have a loss to the Bulls in their home opener. That's not looking pretty good there. And then, of course, their most recent loss came on Sunday night against the Brooklyn Nets. So what's your take on this team? I mean, is it just the same old with them, or do you think they can turn things around here soon?
Well, I think they can turn things around, but if they're going to, where's the defense?
Yeah.
I mean, Doc Rivers, the defensive guru. I told you guys before we came on the air, for defensive guru, when's he going to start guruing? I mean, where is it? That was a problem. Like, they're still under 500 since he came aboard, including the playoffs last year. They're now entering Monday 20-25 since Doc took over. I mean, at what point does he have this massive turnaround? They gave up 119 points per 100 possessions the last two games. That's just not going to cut it. When Giannis and Lillard have been on the court this season, they've been outscored by a total of 5 points. You got to dominate when these guys are on the court. These are your superstars. Giannis is being Giannis, 28 a game. Lillard's got 26 a game, although his shooting threes has been off the last couple of games coming into Monday. Nobody else on the team is averaging even 14 a game.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody's got to wake up on this team besides those two, and they absolutely have to play defense like we're used to seeing them under Coach Bud if they want to be competitive in this Eastern Conference. It's looking like early on Boston could be lapping the field again unless some teams get around to playing the way they're playing, and the Bucks are one of them. They better get it in gear quickly.
Yeah, and I think one of the big sore thumbs for the Milwaukee Bucks is, of course, not having Chris Middleton, because he's typically that guy that does step up and provides that third scoring punch for that group. But Bruce, you, of course, watched the Bucks here tonight before taping, watching your Boston Celtics. What's your take on this team?
I'm concerned that basically they're super top heavy with Giannis and Dame. Those guys are getting all the points. I don't really see great ball movement on their team. I don't really see pace. I mean, they're only averaging 82 shots a game, okay? Their opponents are averaging 95 shots a game, all right? So if you take those 13 shots, that differential, and opposition is shooting 44% against them. So if you take 44% of those, 13 extra possessions, they're leaving 6 points almost on the, they're minus 6 points there, and they're being outscored by 3. So those 6 points a game, I think, they need to pick up their pace a little bit, and I think they need to move the ball better. And you're so right about the defense, World B and Ross. They have been torched by any number of guards in the first week of the season. Between Kobe White, Dennis Schroeder, Cam Thomas, and on Monday night, Peyton Pritchard, for God's sakes, they're not guarding the perimeter at all. They're standing around on offense. They're -5 per game in turnovers. They're -2 in rebounds. I mean, they got to get their shit together real soon because they don't look like the team I thought they were.
You mentioned the perimeter defense. They've been outscored by 42 points total from the 3-point line in 3 games. That can't happen. And here's another thing to mention, follow up on your point, Bruce. They are last in forcing turnovers defensively. At just 10 a game, they're forcing a turnover per 100 possessions. They were last season. And what does that mean? That means you don't get out in transition when you force turnovers. And they had the number 1 transition scorer in the league in Giannis last season. And now you have the number 1 guy, and you don't force turnovers to help him get going. It's not a recipe for success by any measure with the Bucks so far. And it's looking like a lot what we saw last season under Doc, and it just isn't working.
Yeah, definitely not working there, and it's all defense here. I mean, the Bucks right now, heading into tonight, are 4th in the league in team field goal percentage. So they're scoring the ball efficiently, but you got to get stops too, and that's certainly what they are missing at this point. Now, moving on and staying in the Eastern Conference, let's take a look at the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are undefeated on the season at 3-0. But I will preface their wins come over the Toronto Raptors, Detroit Pistons, and Washington Wizards. And, of course, they're playing World Beast Knicks as of taping here tonight. But, Bruce, what are your thoughts on the Cavs thus far?
Well, prior to Monday night against the Knicks, they were the top scoring team in the league, 128 a game, despite not playing at a super fast pace either. A lot of it has to do with those teams you mentioned, the 3 opponents that they've had who are, among the worst 3 teams in the league, or at least, in the Eastern Conference. They're making shots as a team, almost 55% and almost 44% from downtown. And the good thing for, Kenny Atkinson, because those first 3 games, were against poor teams, he's had a chance to get a lot of guys minutes. And his whole, he's got like 10 guys averaging more than 16 minutes a game, including Ty Jerome, who's come out of nowhere this season, averaging almost 14 points in just under 17 minutes, shooting 75% from downtown and almost 74% overall. But as expected, on Monday night, they're playing the Knicks. They're not going to come close to 128 points in that game. They are leading late. They may end up coming away with a win on the road. But, I think there's a little bit of fool's gold in that 3-0 start. But I do think they're a good team. I picked them to win 48 games.
Yeah, no, and I think for a team with a new coach like Kenny Atkinson, being able to have the luxury of playing 3 of the weaker teams to start off the season certainly could bode well for their future moving forward to carry on some good momentum. Roby, what's your thoughts on Cleveland?
Well, to Bruce's point, they're the best shooting team in the league so far. It's 63% effective field goal percentage. That's far and away. Nobody comes to the Knicks are the only other team in the 60s, and they're in the low 60s. Nobody else has come close. So they're far and away the best shooting team so far. And they're a good example of how you don't have to do it the way, say, the Celtics are doing it by all threes. They're shooting about the same from 3-point range as the Celtics, but they take so few threes that very little of their scoring, low percentage of their scoring, comes from made threes. How else are they doing it? They're in the paint like crazy. They're scoring. They're 5th in the league in scoring in the paint. And so, they have, Bruce mentioned the lineup. Their big 4 that, they have on the court, their big 4, Donovan Mitchell, Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. They've only played coming into Monday 38 minutes together. They've outscored opponents by 12 during those 38 minutes, but that's not a lot of time on the court in 3 games. They're mixing in a lot of other guys, and it's proven to be a success. So, yeah, they're doing it, and they're doing it a different way than we're used to seeing. This 3-game stretch to start the season where the offensive efficiency is 125, almost 126 points per 100 possession. That's better than any 3-game stretch they had offensively after the All-Star break last season. So they're off to a tremendous start. And in a conference that suddenly is Boston and everybody else, they're serving notice that don't forget about us.
Yeah, and one of the big questions that we all had heading into the season is how much of an effect Evan Mobley would have on this team. And right now, looking at the team stats in the league, Cleveland is top 3 in the NBA in both steals and blocks. And Mobley's off to a pretty nice start. I mean, the numbers aren't superstar level, but certainly playing a huge factor for this team. He's averaging 18 points, 9.3 rebounds, shooting 48.7% from the field, and 42.9% from downtown. And to go along with that, he's had 2+ blocks in every game this season, including tonight in New York. So he is playing. He's been a big two-way player for this group moving forward, and hopefully his career continues to take the next step, and they'll put the Cavaliers in a nice position moving forward. Next up, we've got, of course, the opponents for the Cavs here tonight, and that is the host city, New York, with the Knicks. They're 1-1 with a win over the Pacers in their home opener, and, of course, a loss on opening night in Boston against the Celtics on ring night. So, World B, I'll start with you with the Knicks here. Do you see this team gelling since the big acquisition of Karl Towns?
They are. It's going to take time to get everybody in. So, they may end up being 1-2 by the time we're done taping here, but I'm not really hitting the panic button here. You got to figure, first of all, their first 2 games came against the opponents who had the 2 most efficient offenses in the history of the NBA last season, in the Celtics and the Pacers. So, they came away 1-1 in that group. And as we mentioned, their opponent, the Cavaliers on Monday, is the best shooting team in the NBA so far for the first week. So the defense has been put to the test, and they really showed up in the Cavaliers game. They held them to a point per possession, which is really unbelievable when you consider the opponent, albeit on MSG. The biggest takeaway for me is we worried about how they would fare in the middle, and it's not looking good so far. Opponents are shooting 81% in the restricted area in the first 2 games against the Knicks, and the Knicks are not grabbing rebounds. They're down near the bottom in offensive rebound percentage. That was their calling card the last couple of years. They were the league leaders in that, and it hasn't been the case so far. So initially, it's going to take time for these guys to get together, but it really looks like they're missing Mitchell Robinson more than maybe they even thought they would.
Yeah, I think having that big solidified center down low, blocking shots, grabbing rebounds is something that this team is missing at this point in time. Bruce, what's your thoughts on what's going on in the Big Apple?
Well, when they had that, blowout loss on opening night against the Celtics, the thing that struck me in watching them was that these guys haven't learned how to play together yet. I mean, the Towns acquisition happened relatively late in training camp. So it was, I think, good for them that over the first 6 days of the season, they only had 2 games, which meant there was lots of practice time for Thibs. And, Thibs loves to, practice, and their defense needed a lot of work. So, they were given a 50% opponent field goal percentage, after their first 2 games. It's a little bit better on Monday night against Cleveland, a little bit better, 48%, okay? But, they're still right there. Their offense has been good, as World B mentioned. And I've really been impressed with Deuce McBride. I mean, he's emerged as a very solid 6th man, 15 a game in the first 2. And he's been like a coach on the floor with his younger teammates, as you guys pointed out when you pushed that clip from X the other night of him talking to the rookie teammate. His shooting stats right now are like video game numbers after 2 games. They're never going to be up at that point for the whole season. But he does take good shots. And when you take good shots and, you can shoot, you can get your 15 coming off the bench. So I'm not worried about them at all. They'll keep practicing. They'll get used to each other, and they'll be fine.
Yeah, no, that Miles McBride contract seemed well timed for the Knicks, as that is looking like a bargain these days, considering what other players are getting. Kind of going off your point here, Bruce, about this team's still trying to figure out how to play with one another. I think one of the biggest things that indicators when you look at the overall stats for this team, they are second to last in the entire NBA in assists as a team at 19.5 per game. So really still trying to figure out that offensive flow, playing with one another, finding guys in the right spots. I have all the confidence in the world. Jalen Brunson leading this group along with Tom Thibodeau will be able to figure this out, but it just might take a little bit more time than some fans might have the patience for. Moving on, though, this is by far for me the most exciting team start thus far, and that is the Los Angeles Lakers. Wow. They are 3-0 on the season with the new rookie coach in JJ Redick. And hear me out. Listen to these wins. Wins over the Timberwolves, the Suns, and the Kings. What do you take away from that, Bruce?
3 quality wins over 3 expected playoff teams, 2 of which, Minnesota and Phoenix, I expect to be in the top 4 out west, for the season. I mean, I dissed them last week when we were previewing them. I said, I looked at them as a 43-win team. And, I'm not ready to jump on the bandwagon just yet, even though those were good wins. They were all at home. Okay. AD has been great, 34-11. LeBron has been LeBron. I mean, freaking guy's 100 years old, and his stats are right at career averages pretty much, at least so. And so far as rebounds and assists, his scoring's all the way down to 23 a game. Of course. And, on any given night, he can still go out and get 30 if he really wants to. He's still that good. I thought that rookie coach JJ Redick handled that whole Bronny situation extremely well. Mm-hmm. He got him on the court in the first game. He got that out of the way. That wasn't going to become a thing because everyone knew he was going to play with LeBron to satisfy the old GOAT. And then he was going to spend most of his time with the South Bay Lakers this season, learning the craft, learning the game. So Dalton Connect's been strong out of the gate, almost 8 points a game in 16 minutes. And they're still not a good 3-point shooting team, but he's going to definitely be one of their top 3-point shooters if his start is any indication. So they're more than holding their own right now. I'm not going to, jump on their bandwagon just yet, but you are what your record is.
No doubt. World B, are you in the bandwagon yet? Are you a believer?
Yeah, I'm a believer. I was a believer coming into the season. I keep pointing out to whoever wants to listen here, the Lakers got knocked out in the first round last season, so everything looked like a disappointment. But people forget, they had 4 more wins last season than the previous season when they made the conference finals. They had the most efficient offense in the history of their franchise last season. So it wasn't a disaster last season. It just they lost to a championship contender in the Nuggets that a game in 5 games in which they had the halftime lead in every game. So it wasn't a terrible thing here. Last season when they trailed by 20 or more points in the game, they were 1-17. They've already matched that win total thanks to the comeback against the Suns. So they got that going for them. Their offensive rebounding has been off the charts so far. Absolutely fantastic compared to last season. They're at like 33% to start this season. Last year they were near the bottom at like 24%. So they're definitely hitting the boards more as far as that goes. Anthony Davis looks like a super duper star, like we always think he can be if he's healthy. 34 a game, 11 rebounds, 1.5 steals per game, almost 2.5 blocks per game to start. He's just playing. He's the best player on this team, and we know when everything's going, and he's adding his game, he's the best player on the team. The 3-point shooting is weird. They're not taking more than I thought they would. I thought they would, at the very least, JJ Redick would have them shooting more often. That hasn't been the case. They were one of the worst teams last season in terms of percentage of their shots coming from 3, and they're still now near the bottom again this season. So I'm waiting to see if that picks up or if it does at all. But so far you got to give JJ Redick an A+ for this start.
Yeah, very impressive start for his young coaching career. I want to give a impressive shout out here to Austin Reeves. As good as LeBron and AD are playing, Austin Reeves has been tremendous for this team thus far. He's had a very balanced approach each game so far this season. 18 points on the season is his average, 6 and just over a half rebounds and 6 assists to go along with it. So he's doing a little bit of everything for this team, both offensively and defensively. And he's kind of emerged as that third star as D'Lo kind of still tries to figure out if he's going to be with the team long-term or not. But with Reeves, I think he's got a nice connection with JJ Redick, and Redick's doing a good job utilizing him efficiently and well around the two stars that they have there. Now, next up, we've got the Oklahoma City Thunder. They find themselves undefeated on the season as well, and they've got wins over the Nuggets, Bulls, and Hawks. And Bruce, let me remind you, they've been doing all this without their big offseason pickup in Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, they're the Thunder are 3-0. They're making lots of noise. See what I did there? SGA continues to play like an MVP and a future Hall of Famer, dare I say it. And he's getting a lot of help. Chet Holmgren has been awesome so far.
Yes.
I mean, he's leading the league in block shots for a game, okay? Grabbing 13 rebounds, averaging just under 24 points and shooting almost 73%. I mean, mostly, inside in the paint, whatever, but still that's efficient. I mean, Jalen Williams, who really, I think most of us expected to be their number 2 scorer after SGA, hasn't really shot that well, but he's still averaging almost 19 a game. Alex Caruso is still finding his way too. And you mentioned Hartenstein. He may not even play until late November or early December. They're the best defensive team in the league by far. They're number 1 in point differential, plus 19.3. They're the only team allowing fewer than 100 points a game, and they're allowing way under 100 points per game, 95.3, okay? They're exceptional guarding the three-point line with Caruso and Lou Dort chasing people around out there. They look very much to me like a potential Western Conference champion, which was my preseason prediction.
Yeah, totally agree there. World B?
Yeah, I would think this is the most impressive team so far in week 1. They're the 11th team in NBA history to start 3-0 with all 3 wins by at least 15 points. That's really
that's a fair point right there.
Start. Yeah, it doesn't get much more impressive than that. Offensively, they're not shooting all that great so far. They're just 23rd, the bottom 10 in effective field goal percentage, under 50%. You at minimum you want to be 50%. So I expect that to pick up at some point. As Bruce mentioned, they're easily the league's best defense. They were second last season, or in the top 5 last season, in defensive efficiency. So this isn't a real big shocker, but they're giving up less than 90 points per 100, or at 90 points per 100 possession. That's ridiculous. Their effective field goal percentage defense is 42%. I mean, that's unbelievable when you factor in threes. They, like I mentioned, they hadn't shot the ball well from 3-point range. First 2 games, they had 16 threes total. The last game on Sunday against the Hawks, they had 16 right then. Holmgren's been outstanding. He hasn't been great shooting from the perimeter. He's been terrible, actually. Let's call it what it is. But his ability to drive to the goal and get baskets, and we saw it, Ross, the night we were doing the playback. Yeah. His ability to get to the basket on drives and get and one has been really impressive. Without Hartenstein, they're still having rebounding issues here. They're bottom 5 in rebound percentage, grabbing 42% of all available rebounds. So that's got to improve. You figure it will when Hartenstein gets there. So far, it hasn't made a difference. So there's no real reason to complain so far. And as Bruce mentioned, SGA is just putting up ridiculous numbers. He's putting up MVP numbers to start the season. Almost 29 a game, almost 9 boards, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks a game. If that does continue, yeah, we're just writing his name as MVP thing for those numbers. If he can do that, he's looking at those are historic type numbers. If he can do that for a whole 82 games.
Yeah, I think what's impressed me most with this team and their start thus far is, we knew SGA was going to be one of the top candidates for MVP, what he's fully capable of doing. We thought Jalen Williams would take the next step. It's actually been their bench that surprised me, especially when they need it most. The other Jalen Williams with a Y, he's been out. He's kind of been their backup center the last couple of years. Obviously, without Hartenstein, they've had to go smaller, and that hasn't seemed to really hurt them much. And that's big credit to Aaron Wiggins and also Ousmane Dieng, who they drafted a couple of years ago and have been developing over the course of the past 2 seasons. Both of those guys have been huge off the bench. Mark Daigneault likes to go 10, sometimes 12 deep with this group, keep guys fresh, and they're just competing on all levels right now, and it's really impressive to see. And maybe I take back my statement on the Lakers having the most impressive start thus far. Will be, you kind of shut me up with that one. So
the Lakers have been one of the biggest surprises for me. But I mean, the Thunder dominating the way they have these first 3 games has been, they're a favorite in the West and they're playing like it. That's impressive.
Yep. And I'm going to turn it right back over to you here, World B. We're going to talk about the Orlando Magic here. They are 2-1 to start the season with wins over the Heat and Nets and a loss to the Grizzlies. What's been your take with them thus far?
Well, we can make it 3-1 after Monday. They came back to beat the Pacers on the night where Paolo Banchero was one assist away from a 50-point triple-double. That's
wow.
37 in the first half on Monday. I think that tied the franchise record for with T-Mac. So, yeah, they've been, they looked like the real deal in their first 2 games of the season. Then they really laid a clunker in Memphis over the weekend, falling behind by 26 at the half, and they never really were in that game after that. The impressions are they're taking more threes than I envisioned for a team that was really last season a bad shooting team. Almost half their shots to start the season have been 3-pointers. That's way up from the previous season. So they've been really good in that regard. Their best 3 players, Banchero, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner. Wagner only played 3 minutes on Monday, had to leave the game for whatever reason. All 3 are shooting over 40% from 3. If they can continue that on a steady pace, this is a team that can be upper half in that conference.
Yep. Bruce?
I think they're okay. I mean, Banchero has now resumed his spot as their leading scorer with that 50 spot on Monday night. But I'll tell you what, the guy who's really kind of struggled to fit in there, I think, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I mean, he was averaging about 5 points in the first 3 games, and then he had only 4 points on Monday night in that win over Indiana. So his scoring average is like less than half of what it was last season. Now, unless he has fallen off the cliff, which I don't think he has, I think the Magic will be fine. They're still, they still have, Wendell Carter Jr. has been in double figures rebounding in every game so far. So, he's coming into his own a little bit. I'm not worried about these guys. I think they'll be fine. KCP, though, they got to figure out, Jamal Mosley's got to figure out some way to get him in better positions to succeed.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Bruce, on KCP, off to a slow start. But let's talk about a guy off their bench that's off to a surprisingly quick start, and that's Anthony Black, a guy they just drafted this previous year. He is averaging 10 points on the season off the bench for this group. Guy that kind of fills up the stat sheet with both rebounds and assists, has that size as a taller point guard, and he could be an emerging guy with KCP kind of off to a slower start. If Jalen Suggs maybe hits a shooting woo, later on in the season, Anthony Black can step in for minutes and help this team win. And if they can ever get Jonathan Isaac back healthy full time, I think this team would be extremely scary out east. But that seems to be their biggest struggle right now. But they're looking pretty good here, 3-1 after tonight, and Paolo with a historic 50-point night at home. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll come back with you for the second half. And we're back here on 48 Minutes, and let's get back to it here. Another team that we had circled here tonight is the Los Angeles Clippers. They're off to a surprising 2-1 start with wins over the Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors, and their only loss came at home during their home opener to the Phoenix Suns. Bruce, what's your take on what's going on in LA thus far?
Well, their 2 victories are over 2 of the past 3 NBA champions, right? The 22 champs and the 23 champs. So I am certainly surprised that they're 2-1 after 3 games. I did not have this team. I didn't see them as being a playoff team this season. As Russ mentioned a few weeks ago, James Harden has sort of reverted back to the Houston James mindset, and that he's putting up numbers, 25 a game, more than 8 rebounds, almost 12 assists, but he's turning the ball over almost 7 times a game, which is tied with Trae Young, the turnover machine, for worst in the league. As a team, the Clippers are in the bottom 3 in most turnovers committed, but they are sharing the ball well. They're 3rd in assists. So, they're just not, perfectly in sync, but I think their approach is good. The team defense has been solid. And I'll tell you what, Ivica Zubac has been one of the best bigs in the league so far. He's averaging almost 23 points, 14 rebounds, shooting 59% from the floor. He doesn't try to do more than he's capable of. He's an ideal kind of a glue type of a big for their team. So if he continues his solid play this season, I think they're going to make me eat my words.
Will B, what's your thoughts on the Clippers? You're usually high on them.
Well, I'll say this. First of all, if they do keep this going, it won't be just Bruce's words that they'll eat. You will have to eat. It'll be everybody, because we all had the same attitude. Bruce shouldn't have to stand out there by himself on that one. We all pretty much.
Thank you, world.
Guilty.
We all pretty much assumed doom for them. Well, coming into the season, you look at the loss of Paul George. You look at the absence of Kawhi, and you wondered, could this team? We were worried about them offensively, but then can they play defense? And that's the only way they're really going to succeed. And so far, entering Monday, 3rd best defense in the league, most efficient defense in the league. I'll let Ross get with the James Harden stuff. Other than I will say this, this is the truest example of how he is back to being James Harden of Houston. He is averaging 9.2 minutes per game time of possession. That leads the league, by the way, which is where he was always during his Houston days, always among the top 2 or 3 in time of possession. Last season, when he had players around him, it was just 6.8 minutes per game. So he's definitely taking on the role of old Houston, James Harden. Bruce mentioned Zubac there, averaging 20, 10, and 4. There's only 4 of the players so far in week 1 doing that. Giannis, Joker, Sabonis, and Luka. That's nice company to be in if you're putting up those kind of numbers. So this has been the most surprising team for me so far in week 1.
All right. And speaking of roles, you talked about James Harden getting back into that role in H-Town. How about Paul George's role? Ever heard of Norman Powell? He said, I'll do it. This guy's averaging 24.7 points per game. He already had a big night in Denver just this past weekend, 37 points, 14 of 21 from the field. He has stepped up big time when this group has needed it most, especially helping James Harden score the basketball. I've always liked him as the 6th man, but he's certainly relishing this moment to kind of get some more touches and get some more shots up. So he is a streaky player. He's off to a hot start. So don't hold your breath if the numbers start to come crashing down, but at least it's a nice start to the season for Powell. Next up, we got the Golden State Warriors. They find themselves 2-1 with wins over the Blazers and Jazz, with a loss to the Clippers. Bruce?
If OKC is the league's best defensive team, the Warriors are 1A. They're 2nd in fewest points allowed and also number 2 in field goal percentage allowed. They're 3rd best in forced turnovers. And with all that, it's no surprise they lead the NBA in point differential after their first 3 games at plus 23, although they do have a loss in there. They lead the league in rebounds. They're number 3 in rebound differential. But all that said, I do think we need to tap the brakes a little bit, because their 2 road wins were at Portland and Utah, okay? 2 of the teams that are expected to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes down to the wire this season. But look, stop me if you predicted that Steph Curry would be 3rd on the team in scoring behind Andrew Wiggins and Buddy Hield. Hield's been huge, and the Dubs are number 2 in made threes, trailing only Boston with 18 a game. And now Curry left the game on Sunday against the Clippers with an ankle sprain, and it's possible he's going to miss a few games. So Hield is right there, looks ready to kind of fill that void. As far as them being number 2 in three-pointers made against the Celtics, next week, Warriors at Celtics, November 6th. Okay. Warriors are in Boston. Jason Tatum plays his first game against his Olympic coach / nemesis, Steve Kerr. And Ross, here's a question for you.
Okay.
Should we take the over on JT's point total that night, whatever it's set at?
Yes. I'm hitting the over on that one. I think he's going to be fired up for this one as much as you are here. You've got this one circled. I'm sure he's had it double circled on his calendar. So he's definitely going to be ready to go for that one. Real B, are you pumping the brakes on the Warriors 2-1 start as well, especially given the fact Curry's now hurt? And even prior to that, Curry hadn't been, he's been good, but he hasn't been great.
Yeah, I say we'll take a wait and see approach to see if it continues. I am impressed with their defense. They still have Draymond Green, who's just a nightmare when he's guarding you to get your points off. So, the 2 biggest wins this season in the NBA belong to the Warriors when, 36 points over the Blazers and then 41 over the Jazz. So, as Bruce mentioned, these are the lowly teams, but you know what? They're dominating them. The reason I would pump the brakes on it is a couple of reasons. The biggest one being when Curry was out Sunday, the Warriors only scored 37 points on 45 possessions. That's an offensive efficiency of about 82 or so. That's just, if he's going to miss time, you need somebody to step up. And as good a start as Buddy Hield had, 1 of 9 on 3 Sunday when they need him, that's not going to cut it. And our guy, Brandon Podziemski, our guy, 48 minutes for just 1 of 14 on 3s to start the season. That's absolutely not going to get it done because they need his production, especially with Curry being out.
Yeah, and I had just mentioned on the Clippers, Norman Powell stepping up into Paul George's shoes. Buddy Hield, who you mentioned, Bruce, he looks to be really enjoying stepping in for Klay Thompson there in Golden State as well. This guy has shot 12 or more shots in each of the first 3 games for this group, and said after one of the most recent games that he hasn't felt this comfortable since being at Oklahoma. So he seems to be meshing well with Steve Kerr's offensive strategy there. So keep an eye on him, especially if Curry is out. Moving right along here, we're going to go to the Houston Rockets. Surprisingly, they find themselves 1-2. They've got their 1 win over the Memphis Grizzlies, but also have losses to the Spurs and to the Hornets, which happened on opening night in Houston for them. So, World B, I'll start with you on Houston. Are you surprised that they've kind of gotten off to a skittish start?
I'm not terribly surprised. They really let one get away opening night against the Hornets. Hornets had a nice second half comeback in Houston. That really shouldn't happen as a rule. As much as I want to see the Hornets win as a fan of theirs, that shouldn't happen to a team like the Rockets. That's challenging. But it's 1 week. It's 1 game. It's not the end of the world. They still can't shoot. They're under 50% in effective field goal percentage. Excuse me. They, the 2 losses, they were under 50% in effective field goal percentage. Even in their 1 win, they were only at 53, which is okay, but it's not anything to write home about. The one thing I would say in their favor, they have a steady lineup. Their starting lineup of Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Sengun, and Jabari Smith. They played more minutes than any other 5-player lineup in the league so far, 55, and they're doing well. They're outscoring opponents by almost 13 points per 100 possessions. So that is an effective lineup. They just need, to get a better rotation when they're, scoring production, when those guys are off the court. Jalen Green, I'm begging you, shoot the ball better. 41% effective field goal percentage, excuse me. You got to shoot the ball better. You want to be paid. You want to be a superstar. You want to be an all-star. You got to shoot.
Yeah. Bruce, what's your take on your old friend Ime Udoka's squad in Houston?
Well, Jalen has the proverbial green light from Ime Udoka.
Yeah.
He leads the team in points, field goals attempted, field goals made, 3-pointers attempted, 3-pointers made. he is taking care of the ball too. He's only turning it over 1.3 times per game. He is their alpha at age 22. And Alpi Şengün is another 22-year-old averaging a double-double. He could have been an all-star last year. He probably was the first or second guy on the snub list. But he's averaging almost 13 boards. But he was badly outplayed on Saturday by Victor Wembanyama in a 3-point loss at San Antonio. And they're playing them again on Monday night. And they're clinging to a lead late in the game. They had a double-digit lead going into the fourth quarter. It's a weird, back-to-back away games at San Antonio. So Saturday and Monday. So they may be able to hang on to that win. But look, they're decent on defense. They need to reduce their turnovers. Other than Green, they're turning it over quite a bit. And 3 of their starters are under the age of 23. So it's really a little bit soon to judge this crew. But if they can hang on and get this road win in San Antonio on Monday night, they'll be 2-2. I mean, look, they're not expected to be a 50-win team. I think low 40s would be kind of in their wheelhouse. And, I don't see any reason to panic if I'm a Houston fan.
No, I don't think I would panic at all with this group. I think right now what they're trying to do is get a feel for their younger group, as you mentioned there, Bruce, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith Jr., Şengün, and then off the bench, they've got the Thompson twin and Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore. I think at this point they're kind of trying to align the stars to see who fits, who doesn't, and then maybe try to make a splash at the deadline, because they certainly seem like a team that could be geared up to make a run at a guy like Jimmy Butler should he become available and really make a run come playoff time. But lots of talent there, just a lot that they have to get sorted out. But Jalen Green's been one of my favorite overs in terms of points thus far on a game-to-game basis thus far in the betting season, I should say. Now, speaking of the panic button, Bruce, the Denver Nuggets, they were 0-2 heading into tonight, and I'm trying to quickly look. Oh, they did. Okay, so they're now 1-2 on the season. However, they had to go to overtime and fight back into a game in Toronto against the Raptors to get their first win. So they've lost to the Thunder and the Clippers and almost lost to the Raptors here on Monday night. Are you hitting the panic button on this team, or what's going on in Denver?
I may have overrated this team.
Okay.
Picked them for number 3 in the West, 51 wins. Heading into Monday, they were 0-2, as you said. Now they're 1-2. Joker is still Joker, 28.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, 8.5 assists, doing Joker things. But other than Christian Brown, none of the other starters have come with the heat so far. I mean, and Aaron Gordon's shooting 36%. Michael Porter Jr. is shooting 30%. Even Jamal Murray's shooting just a hair over 40%. But they're dead last in the league in points scored. 95.5 points a game going into Monday night. I know that they're now going to probably be up there around 100. They were the only NBA team averaging under 100, and they were 9.5 points fewer per game than the number 29 team. So think about that. It's abysmal. They're lucky they got away with one in Toronto. And they're not looking like a 51-31 team right now. That's for sure.
No. World B, what's your assessment on this group?
Where's the offense? I mean, Bruce mentioned they're the least efficient, heading into Monday, they were the least efficient team offensively and the worst shooting team, both last in each category. Defense has been okay, less than 110 points per 100 possessions. That's fine this day and age in the NBA. Their starting lineup, we worry about how Christian Brown would fit in replacing KCP. That starting lineup outscoring opponents by 18 points in 48 minutes on the court together. But every other lineup, when one of those guys is off the court, they're getting outscored by 36 points. That just, that can't happen. And it at the end of the day, it's all about Joker. And when he's not on the court, this team is just, they're not good. 24 minutes he's been off the court in the first 2 games. So that's basically one half. Denver scored 28 points on 51 possessions. I mean, how are you going to win? How can you win if you can't do anything when your best player is not on the court? So until they figure that out, they got away with it the last couple of years. It's always been one-sided. this is really one-sided now so far to start the season.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the biggest things that stands out as far as that offense not clicking is they just don't have the shooting on this team at all. There's no shooters on the perimeter to kind of bring relief to the Joker. I mean, you can only cut so much before the defenses figure it out and put a stop to that and force you to take threes. And they didn't add any shooting over this summer. One guy I thought that could have really maybe helped this team, especially last minute, who was available, is our friend of the show, Doug McDermott, who ended up with the Sacramento Kings. Yes, he doesn't play the best defense, but they're desperate for shooting, and they don't have shooters available at the end of that bench. Mike Malone can look down there, and I don't know who he can trust to knock down an open three-point look right now. So that's a cause for concern in the Western Conference this year for the Denver Nuggets. And speaking of Doug McDermott and the Sacramento Kings, they're the last team we're going to pick and talk about here tonight. They're 0-2 on the season, so their losses come against the Lakers and the Timberwolves in their home opener. They do have a chance to redeem themselves tonight at home as they are hosting my guy, Scoot Henderson. So a really good opportunity for them to pick up a win. But
tremendous opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, it's easy now. Easy. The Blazers just beat the New Orleans last night.
Oh, that's right. I hear they're going to put up a banner to honor that.
They might have to. But anyway, enough from you, World B. Bruce. Your good friend Mike Brown there, should he be worried yet, or do you think he can figure it out with this group?
Well, his teams are always solid defensively. So, I expect their defense to improve. And as it does, I expect the Kings to move up the ladder out west. As you mentioned, the Portland Trailblazers are riding that one-game winning streak coming into the game tonight. I don't expect it to be extended to 2. I like Sac to win the game. The 0-2 start, again, you are what your record are. But both of the losses were close games. A 2-point loss to the Wolves, a 4-point loss to the Lakers. Domantas Sabonis is playing like a mini Joker, like he always has. 67% from the floor, 57% on threes. Big numbers, double numbers, 5.5 assists. But their defense, as we said, they're getting out rebounded by 8.5 a game, which is among the worst in the entire league. But Mike Brown will coach defense, and again, I expect them to move up. I expect them to get off the schneid on Monday night against Portland. I've said this a few times already. I'm not ready to push the panic button in Sacktown. But again, DeRozan's been great so far. He seems to have fit in well. So, just tighten up the D and they should be okay.
Yeah. And you mentioned those were 2 close losses down the stretch for Sacramento. So we'll be a lot like your New York Knicks, obviously trying to figure out the offense, getting on the same page. Is that maybe what might be happening in clutch situations down the stretch? I mean, one of the things we thought would be a strength for the Sacramento Kings is the clutch play with both fourth quarter Fox and DeRozan on board. So you think that's maybe just a kink they're trying to work out?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not, as Bruce mentioned, I'm not concerned about them at the moment. Their defense has to improve. They really took a major step forward last season. They were in the upper half in defensive efficiency, which is really rare. It's the first time in a decade they've been not in the bottom 10. So, kudos for them for last year. So then when you see them start out like this defensively near the bottom in opponent shooting and near the bottom in efficiency, you're like, oh, geez, here we go again. They've outscored opponents by 58 points in transition. They're the number 1 transition team in the league, scoring almost 42 points per game in transition. So how in the world are they 0-2? It just doesn't – that's why you don't really worry about it. They're going to get it together. Here's a note. 37-7 in week 1 teams were when they had a lead by 5 or more than 5 points in the fourth quarter. 2 of the 7 losses have been to the Kings, been by the Kings. So I expect it to turn around. They need to step up their defense a little bit, keep the transition game going. And, with DeRozan, with De'Aaron Fox, I expect these close games, they're going to eventually pull them out.
Yeah, I would expect that too. Got a lot of faith in the Beam team to start hitting the beam more than they're hitting the panic button over there. But one guy that I think is going to have a tremendous year, having watched this team throughout preseason and a few of the regular season games, is Keegan Murray. He's off to a hot start, averaging 18.5 points per game, shooting the ball at over 41% from downtown. He really helps space the floor for this group and seems to be taking the next step in his career amongst a great core. I think he plays off of DeRozan, Sabonis, and Fox so well and seems to be a nice piece for this group moving forward. Now, as we get to our final thoughts here, Bruce, I know that you had a fun discussion you wanted to briefly touch on here.
WTF, and I think we all know what that means, with the Dwyane Wade statue.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God. I mean, Wade, it was unveiled on Sunday, and Dwyane Wade said the following upon seeing it. That's crazy. I can't believe that. Who's that guy? Like, good question, Flash. It looks nothing like him, okay? There were shots of him looking at the statue, and he did compliment it, and he complimented it again on Monday because I think he's like in a defensive mode now because the entire planet thinks this thing doesn't look at all like him. One social media user said the face looked like Lawrence Fishburne, the actor.
Yes, it does.
It kind of does. I mean, it looks like a middle-aged dude. It doesn't look like Dwyane freaking Wade. Look, the Arison family who owns the Miami Heat, I think they should ask for their money back from the sculptor, okay? And although LeBron left not in a happy place, I don't expect him to end up with a statue in Miami, not as long as Pat Riley is like breathing in oxygen. But if they do a statue of Chris Bosh, who may very well deserve a statue, he's a Hall of Famer, they ought to find a new sculptor.
I mean, if they do want a Chris Bosh, it might just look like a raptor because that was always the thing with him with his hair. He kind of looked like a little dinosaur. World B, do you think, real quick here before we get on the show, do you think Pat Riley was able to see the statue before it was unveiled, or was he just as surprised as Dwyane was when he saw it?
Boy, I hope he was just a surprise. I hope he didn't look at that and go, "That's good to go."
Hey, looking good.
Because I find it hard to believe that they would let something like that go. It just doesn't look like them at the end of the day. I know it's hard. I'm not criticizing artists who can do that stuff, but it just doesn't look like him. There's just no other way around it.
Yep.
On the other hand, Lawrence Fishburne is deeply humbled and honored to have a statue of himself wearing Dwyane Wade's uniform outside the Kaseya Center.
Yeah, he's really made it now that he has an NBA uniform on at an NBA arena. Now, before we close out the show, you got one final message, Bruce?
I do. I want to wish my first granddaughter, Sophie Robin Bernstein, a happy first birthday. Her birthday is October 28th. She is the cutest kid ever. Her parents, Mitchell and Becca, are doing a wonderful job raising her. We were there over the weekend for a Halloween party / birthday party. I'm Spider-Man, by the way, for Halloween. I don't know what you guys are going to be, but happy birthday, Sophie. We love you. Grandpa loves you.
Love that. All right. Happy birthday, Sophie. And with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe, presented by BetOnline. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.